This presentation is an overview of 4 leadership theories facilitated by Dr. Robert Gordon, Aspen University, doctoral course. In reviewing the leadership theories, we'll take a look at the pros and cons, the benefits and challenges, and we'll look at the variables associated with the theories. It's an opportunity to consider which leadership theory best focuses on the current environment in the workplace. We'll look at contingency, continuum, path goal, and leadership substitutes theories. Important to look at the variables that impact leadership. The workplace environment, what's working, what isn't working, what's the goal, what are changed goals, and what's the path to get there. Consistency in expectations and rewards, what skill sets the leader and the team members bring to the table, and ultimately the remembrance that willingness to succeed is important, but that these theories are not prescriptive. It doesn't necessarily do a one-on-one match with what the skill sets that the leader has with the variables and needs that team members have. Important variable to remember. Mutual respect is extremely important in achieving success in applying these leadership theories. Having discipline, having willingness and energy to focus on success, includes effective communication, collaborative efforts, and certainly a willingness to solve problems when problems do arise. Being open-minded, having a growth mindset to resolve the issue, and even if the issue doesn't immediately resolve the problem, being willing to go back and take a look at what's working and what isn't working. In Hershey and Blanchard's contingency theory, the research says it all depends. Depends on the skill sets of the leader, depends on the skill sets of the team members, depends on their willingness to work together. So the contingency is that there's an LPC scale that leaders can use to best determine what are the characteristics and attributes that they don't want to work with their employees. So the contingency, again, what the leader is willing to bring to the table, what skill sets the subordinates bring to the table, and ultimately what leadership decides they're willing to work with. In the continuum theory by Tannenbaum and Schmidt, there's a leader or a subordinate-centered approach. Wide range of situational variables, but when the leader is making the decisions, they're in charge. Authoritarian. Yes, they can share their reasons and rationales, but they don't have to. In the subordinate-centered approach, the subordinates have say-so in the goals, the operation, and how achievement of success will occur. In the path goal theory, the leader is to adapt their skill sets to the needs of the subordinates. The leaders clarify a clear path to get to the goals. One of the challenges is that leaders don't always know what the subordinate goals are, but it's certainly an opportunity that House presents, that the leader be willing and able to adapt their skill sets to subordinate needs. Ideal situation to meet the needs of the organization if the leader understands and recognizes subordinate needs. In leadership substitutes by Kerr and Jermeyer, competent and willing team members are important. Understanding that when in fact the team members have the skill sets, the growth mindset, the willingness to problem solve, and the goal to achieve success, that maybe a formalized leader may not be necessary. The leadership substitute becomes the skill sets of the team members. They become the informal leaders of their organization in getting the task done. Leadership is hands-off, team members hands-on. So it's an interesting alternative to the 3 prior leadership theories presented. So how does that look if we're looking to apply the best fit for the theory? Well, I'm choosing K-12 education, what I'm most familiar with. In looking at K-12 education, there's consistent day-to-day leadership schedules or day-to-day leadership and team schedules. There's a routine for students. The variables are typically pre-scheduled, and if there are exceptions, they're typically rehearsed. Example, in an emergency, in a fire drill, exceptions are rehearsed, and students and faculty and staff know what the plan is. In addition, communications are typically word of mouth, electronic, or PA or public address system, so there's consistency in that practice. Office personnel are usually the point of contact. Doesn't require as much directive because the team works autonomously because the consistency in the goals and the direction, and that's student learning. Anything unexpected is usually rehearsed. When we look at leadership substitution as the alternative theory to be applied, the understanding is that faculty and staff are independent, experienced, and autonomous. Staff focus on students. Students are focused on learning. Students know as much about the schedule as teachers do. They can tell you exactly what time a course starts and what time it ends. They can tell you first period from seventh period. Most school exceptions to the schedule are rehearsed. Students know that there's an exception to the schedule on Friday, the fourth Friday of every month. When we look at exceptions, again, they're generally addressed by and with the team. So rehearsed, leadership substitution, because faculty and staff and students are rehearsed and their exceptions are minimal, leadership substitution seems to work best. So how does this get implemented? Well, the recommendation would be to focus on what's working. We understand in the process of learning, especially in leadership substitutes, that the autonomy, the independence, and the focus works. So focus on what's working is an absolute benefit. Enhance effective communication. Continue with what's working in the communication, but enhance it. And getting input from team members will be essential. Establish stakeholder involvement. As a result of the pandemic, there was a learning curve to understand input from stakeholders, from vendors, from community, from the medical community, from grandparents, from those that had a vested interest in the success of our students and our schools. So establishing a formalized process for stakeholder involvement. Consider rewards for resolutions. Consider when there's a challenge, what's a reward for some possible resolutions? Growth mindset, important, not fixed, not looking at what we've always done, but considering options that maybe haven't been considered. Understanding that Zoom was going to take over opportunities for school delivery of content was probably not an option on the table. In the process, review lessons learned, and then initiate leadership substitution learning so that faculty and staff and stakeholders understand the goal is to find an alternative when it comes to leadership by involving all of the stakeholders. So how does this look? Success looks like being goal-focused, achievement-oriented, making sure there's strategic planning, that we understand skill sets for preparedness, that confidence and flexibility are key, that the growth mindset is a must, that problem identification and solving is essential, and the desire to succeed is important to the process. References help us understand what the achievement and the references to the research offer.